greatly to increasing awareness of Baby Loss Awareness Week, and that's led itself to manifesting in some local groups getting together, and next Tuesday my constituents will be taking part in a wave of light outside Ellesmere Port Civic Hall. I think that's a really good way of encouraging more people to come and talk about what they've been through, and the more people who have that dialogue, the better. I'd like to have been with them next week. I suspect I will be here, even though my thoughts will be with them next week. But I think that what we can show them today is that actually, when this House puts its mind to it, we can work across party, we can make things better for our constituents, and anyone who's heard the debate today will understand why it's so important on this subject that we do that.
Andrew Percy.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I obviously associate myself with lots of the comments that have been made in this debate today, and particularly the comments of my honourable friend, the member for Eddisbury, and the Honourable Lady, the members for North Ayrshire and Arran, who have talked very movingly about their own sad and personal experiences through this. And there's not an issue, I suppose, many of us, if we haven't experienced it ourselves, necessarily sometimes think about the support that is available. And I have to confess, it's not one that I had considered in any great depth, because we had no personal family experience of this, and the assumption being, of course, that you think that all of the services that will be there to support people in this most vulnerable of times will be there. And it wasn't until somebody came to me to talk about the project I described in the intervention to the Minister at the beginning. I wasn't sure whether I was going to get the opportunity to speak, so it's on that I wish to comment a bit further. But I hadn't really given thought to the experience of bereaved parents on a maternity suite, and this was raised with me thanks to this brilliant project which was put forward by the Health Tree Foundation in North Lincolnshire, who are the hospital charity for the North Lincolnshire and Goole NHS Trust. And I want to pay tribute in particular to a member of my staff who actually brought this to me, Julie Reid, who's my community support manager. She tasks herself with going out and supporting local good causes, and as a result she's managed to write funding bids and bring in over £1 million for local good causes. And this was one that she took up on my behalf to support this brilliant foundation, and she successfully, through her brilliant ability at writing funding bids, helped secure £22,500 towards this £175,000 project. A lot of people did a lot of work on it, particularly, as I say, the Health Tree Foundation, the maternity suite itself. But I just want to talk a little bit about what this suite does and what it means now that it is open. It opened in July, known as the Cherish Suite, and the thing that really struck me about this was when it was described to me, when the experience was described to me of somebody who has been on a maternity suite and bereaved, that there are two things that perhaps a bereaved parent doesn't want to do or to experience. First of all, it is to go home necessarily very quickly, and secondly, it is also they want to be on the suite but not necessarily surrounded by people who are having their children delivered and are enjoying this most joyous of moments. But as I say, they don't necessarily want to go home either, and the brilliant jobs the midwives and all of the professional staff do in supporting those parents was not in doubt, but it was about the ability of parents who have been bereaved to have a safe and quiet space on the maternity suite, like every other parent, where they can enjoy time with their baby, where they can bring their family in, where they are not rushed out, where they are provided with privacy, a space where they can stay for as long as they require and spend that important time with baby. And that is exactly what the Cherish Suite, which is now open at Scunthorpe Central Maternity Suite, is providing. It is on the maternity suite, but in a private area. It is quiet. And I just want to describe the experience of one set of parents who sadly lost their child before this suite was open, and they described what it would have meant for them. Their daughter Alicia, they sadly lost on the suite in 2017, and her parents said, when we lost our daughter, we were in the middle of the delivery suite, surrounded by people doing their jobs and delivering newborn babies. Other couples were walking out with babies, and it felt like we had been stabbed in the heart. And I should say, it's also been described to me that other parents have said that when they've experienced this, that they have felt that they have in some way failed in some way as well, which is a really terrible thing to hear. We didn't have the opportunity to use a place like this to heal and recover from the heartbreak. It would have helped tremendously. It's quiet and you couldn't hear anyone outside the room, a safe space for them to spend that time with their baby. And I'm so proud that the Health Tree Foundation has been able to deliver this for our area because this suite, as I say, is a place where they spend time with baby, but also where memories are made. And the Health Tree Foundation provide these memory makers, doing prints of baby's hands, casts even of legs and arms, and providing teddy bears, making teddy bears from the clothes that the babies would have themselves worn. So I really hope that this is something that we can look at, whether it's in the design of new maternity suites or in how we can provide support to those existing maternity suites, so that there is this place where those parents who have been bereaved can spend time with baby in privacy on that maternity suite, being supported like every other parent there, but in a way that is sensitive to the particular needs of them. And I should say also that the suite also, of course, provides support for and all of the information and necessary support for the ongoing mental health support that is so often required. And I particularly associate myself with the comments of the Honourable Member for Ellesmere Port with regards to the vital role talking therapies can play in this. This is something I have more personal experience of, and have to say it is a brilliant talking therapies are so undervalued, I think, and can be used in so many different ways. But in this particular area, they're one that parents need to be assured that they have an absolute and guaranteed access to. So I don't want to say anything more than that, other than just to thank the Health Foundation in North Lincolnshire and Goole for providing this, and thank the maternity staff who were doing a brilliant job anyway in supporting bereaved parents, but who have been so enthusiastic behind this project and are now have this special place as you walk into the suite that is private, where they can do even more to support bereaved parents. And I really hope this is something. We're not the only place where this is happening, of course not, but the fact that it just doesn't happen automatically and that there isn't a space such as this everywhere, to me was quite striking. So on that, Mandatory Speaker, I will conclude and just conclude by saying simply that I agree with so much that have been said today and pay tribute to all of those who have done so much in this area, both here and outside.
Yeah.
Anna Soubry.
I'm Deputy Speaker, and it's a real pleasure to follow my honourable friend, the member for Brigg and Goole. And my contribution to this debate touches on a lot of what he has said about what had been undoubtedly the situation, and one that had struck me again because a number of two constituents in particular came to see me. I had my children at the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham. They went in expecting, as most of us do when we go into hospital to give birth, that they would be, after the delivery, a safe delivery, they would be taking their baby home. And Emily was their second child, and she died. She was a stillborn baby. And that was in 2013, at the end of 2013. And until I met Richard and Michelle Daniels, I hadn't appreciated, because when I'd given birth to my babies, I'd had these two wonderful deliveries. I don't talk too much about how it was very painful, but the great pleasure and joy, the magic that I found in becoming a mother on those two occasions. And my real shock when Richard and Michelle came to tell me that when Emily had been born dead, as the Honourable Member has described, although they got the most terrific care, love and support from the remarkable staff at the QMC, there was no facility at all. And I couldn't imagine, I mean, it is true that there is nothing worse that can happen to any of us than to lose a child. But to lose a child and then to be surrounded by people who are having all that wonderful joy and celebration of a new birth, a new member of their family, must be even more heartbreaking, and not to be able to say goodbye properly, not to have that quiet time. The opportunity, of course, to bring in other members of the family so that they too can say goodbye. I was just blown away in my shock and horror that in Nottingham, in both the QMC and the City Hospital, we had no such suite at all. And of course, this had been going on for many years, and one can only imagine how many people, as we've heard in all the touching speeches that have been made by honourable members, how many people have suffered in that way. So Richard and Michelle Daniels in early 2014 set up a charity called Forever Stars, and they poured all their remarkable energy and dedication into making a great success of it. They've raised somewhere in the region of over £400,000. And their first project was to install a Serenity Suite at the QMC, a place where, in the event of an unsuccessful delivery, the loss of a child, a couple can go, they can say goodbye properly in all the way and all the manner that has been described. And as I say, siblings can come along, other members of the family. And in due course, there's another Serenity Suite at the City Hospital in Nottingham, which again, thanks to the Forever Stars Foundation, the charity which that they have set up, is in operation. And it was by a remarkable coincidence that in 2015, it was in this place, as we have heard, that the honourable members for Eddisbury and for Colchester set up their APPG, and we had that first debate. And I remember it distinctly. So many appalling stories, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I think there wasn't a dry eye in this place, including your good self, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I think all of us were filled with just a mixture of grief, of horror, of disbelief that so many people suffered baby loss, and really, frankly, with none of the proper facilities that they should have. And it is indeed a full credit to the government of the time and the former Secretary of State for Health that did not mess about. They took up the campaign, and undoubtedly huge progress has been made. And it really is thanks to a lot of cross-party working, but through the considerable efforts of this former Secretary of State and his team, and of course those two honourable members and all the others, that we have seen such a marked progress. Returning to Forever Stars, their work continues. As you can see, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am wearing pink and blue. Wasn't necessarily my first choice to put on this morning. It's a bit of a bet with Mr. Richard Daniels that I would do this, but I wanted to do it because they are painting Nottingham and indeed Broxtowe pink and blue, like so many other charities that have come out of so much of this tragedy and doing this great work, and raising awareness as much as the other work that they are doing. We've heard why that is so important. And I too join in the calls from this report that the Alliance has put out today, out of sight, out of mind, for specific work now to be done to make sure that grieving parents and siblings and other members of the family, I may one day be a grandparent, and to see one's own child and an in-law, a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law to suffer in the way that we know people do must be terrible for grandparents. We know the effect it has on siblings, and we often forget siblings, how one explains to them, and they often need support. And I know that Forever Stars tell me that just in the last 24 hours, they have had 4 calls from parents who've suffered a baby loss, who would very much like to be referred in some way to the sort of counselling and psychological and sometimes psychiatric services that they desperately need. So it's really important that we now make sure those services are in place. I'm told it's not just that 60% of parents that were surveyed want those services, but 9 out of 10 CCGs don't actually commission the very talking therapies that the honourable gentleman was speaking about, and rightly so. Forever Stars continues in its great work. It is now looking at, and in fact is raising the funds and creating a Serenity Garden in Nottingham, where parents can go, and every quarter there will be a service where parents and of course other family members can go along and say goodbye again to a child, a baby that they have lost. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, Thank you. I think it's really important to recognise that when this place comes together in this way, it does do some terrific work. And this APPG has done that terrific work on a cross-party basis. And it's all too easy, and I know it's the current political climate, for people to start to criticise Parliament and in many ways set it up against the people. And that would be wrong in many, many ways. And this is an example of why it's just not true. Because when this place comes together, as I say, in the way that it does, it genuinely does great work and it touches the lives of real people.
The Right Honourable Lady is absolutely correct. When this chamber, this House, comes together and works properly, then we do achieve what those who send us here expect us to achieve and hope that we will achieve. And it's just such a pity that more people don't watch these proceedings on a day like this instead of on days when the chamber is crowded. Victoria Prentice.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, I am, as ever, very grateful to have been called to speak in this debate, though I wasn't anticipating I would be because I wasn't here at the beginning, for which I can only apologise. I was present elsewhere with unavoidable duties. But this is the debate we love to hate participating in. It's not a pleasurable experience for any of us, I think, who've lost a child in particular, to be part of. And I really do feel for members across the House who I know feel exactly as I do when we do speak in this debate. Nevertheless, I am very grateful for the opportunity to lay my annual asks on the table. And this year's asks include first of all, an enormous amount of thanks, not least to the Secretary of State, the previous Secretary of State for Health, whose speech I am really looking forward to watching on catch-up tonight. I am immensely grateful, as are all of us who've been involved in this area for many years, for all that he did. It must be counted as one of his major achievements as Secretary of State that since 2010 there has been a 19% reduction in stillbirths and an 8% reduction in maternal mortality. Those are really good figures, and I hope that he will look back on his career in many, many years when he retires. I can retire. And will count that as among his most important, well, probably his most important achievement. I expect that he said, as did the honourable gentleman who's left his place opposite for Elsbury Port, that blame is probably not the way to go, but that we need a cultural shift in the NHS. And my ask this year is that we should make maternal death a never event. Luckily, they are rare. I was almost one of them myself, but I do think that making them a never event with the definition and the muscle that gives maternal deaths would be very helpful. I also, with my prison service background, would add that when a child or indeed a mother dies in custody, that should also probably be a never event, and the chain of investigations which flow from that should flow from that. I know that the recent death in custody is being very well investigated, and there's no need to comment on that case further now. But I would add that it is helpful to have the never event, because it does set in train a course of events and a course of investigations which needn't be blame-filled, but which are helpful for learning. The one other point I'd like to make is that worldwide, sadly, the situation is not as helpful as it is in this country. A baby dies every 11 seconds worldwide, and many, many of the maternal deaths in particular are completely preventable. And I'm really pleased that our Secretary of State for International Development is choosing to make maternity a priority for DFID. He wrote an excellent article about this. I think in the Times last week, and I would really encourage honourable members to read that article. He's working by helping members of the Royal College of Midwives to go to rural Bangladesh to provide training. He's resourcing organisations which help work with women who've had FGM performed on them and who have dreadful maternal complications as a result. He's working with vaccinations, which also are so helpful in preventing the deaths of newborn babies. And across the board, I think the fact that maternity is now a priority for DFID is really, really helpful. I'd like to close, Madam Deputy Speaker, by thanking you for your support in this area and for allowing me to say a few brief words this afternoon, and by advertising the baby loss service in St Mary's, Banbury, which is at 6 o'clock this Sunday. It is an extraordinary event. We've only been doing it for a few years. We got people in that church the first year who had never talked about their loss, and it is really overwhelming. I know these services, as the Honourable Gentleman is saying, are taking place all over the country. Unfortunately, this year we haven't organised one in Parliament, as we normally do, because we're not sitting. But we will do, I'm sure, in future years. And I would like to thank everybody who's taken part in this debate. This is now, I think, annual. I'm thrilled we got government time, and I hope we do in the future.
Yeah. Sarah Champion.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm really grateful to be allowed to speak. I just want to make a couple of points to the Minister. The first one is there is a lack of trained paediatric nurses, and particularly those in palliative care. So anything the Minister could do to encourage people to train to that very, very vital specialism would be hugely appreciated. The other point is children's hospices are wonderful, remarkable places, but virtually all of their money comes from the public through fundraising. Again, if there is anything the Minister could do to give them just a base coverage of funding on a statutory basis year in year, that would make such a difference to them being able to commit to those services. The final thing I want to say is drawing from my very privileged experience of running a children's hospice and meeting hundreds and hundreds of families. And the one thing that struck me most from all of those families was they would say that what they liked best and what they got most from the hospice was being able to talk about their child that had passed. And I hadn't realised that that's something which most people listening to this in this chamber out there don't do. They said that friends would cross the street to avoid talking to them, not because they were being mean, but because they didn't want to put a burden on that person. They didn't want them to cry, they didn't want them to crumble. And actually the one thing they want more than anything else is to talk about that child, because that's what keeps them alive in their hearts. So if I could just put the plea out, this is so important, this debate, and it's so important to everybody that's involved in it, that is watching it. Please just talk to that person. Celebrate that child. However brief their life was, it was an important life that we need to recognise. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, can I thank the Minister in her absence for bringing the motion to the floor of the House today. And it's always been a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady for Rotherham, but we've had some marvellous speeches here today with personal experiences, and every one of them has been very poignant, very particular, and has encapsulated what this is all about. I spoke on a previous motion in baby loss, and I'm very happy to continue to do so in remembrance of those little lives lost, because of the fact of the matter is, since last year, more hearts have been broken, more arms left empty, and more grief has entered into homes throughout the UK of GB and NI. I believe this deserves recognition this year in this House, and indeed, as the Honourable Lady for Banbury said, every year in this House as well. I'd like to thank some of the members, and I'm going to mention three in particular, but it doesn't take away from everyone else who has contributed to it as well. The Honourable Member for Thirsk and Malden, the Honourable Lady for Edinburgh for her contribution, and Honourable Member for Colchester, who in the German debates and other debates in this House have certainly told us their personal story and helped us to understand exactly what it means to lose a child. One of the things that came out of those debates, those adjournment debates and those contributions in this House, Madam Deputy Speaker, was the need to have a room in the hospital. An honourable member referred to that in his own constituency. And so, excuse me, I have a bit of a chest infection. I'm trying to keep it off if I can. To grieve and for privacy, and that those of faith as well, because I mentioned this to the Honourable Dr. Colchester, and he can probably remember it. It's very important, I believe, to have faith and have talking personally, that people can then use that to help get the other side of the grief process. And then it's also important when you have those rooms for the privacy, that you're able to call upon someone of faith to come and give support. The Honourable Lady, for the other hand, spoke beforehand how important it is to have someone to speak to, how important it is to have someone to relate to and understand. Most miscarriages happen in the first 12 weeks, known as early pregnancy. An estimated 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, 1 in 5 if we only count women who realise or reported the miscarriage. And around 11 in 1,000 pregnancies is ectopic, and about 1 in 100 women in the UK experience recurrent marriages, 3 or more in a row. And more than 6 in 10 women who have a recurrent miscarriage go on to have a successful pregnancy. The risk of miscarriage greatly reduces in the second trimester. This is called late miscarriage. My mother miscarried 3 occasions. There have been 7 in our family if that hadn't happened. My sister also miscarried on 3 occasions, and the girl who does PPS and writes the speeches for this House, for me anyway, and keeps me right. And so she's a very busy girl, as probably everyone would understand when it comes to the contributions that are made. She also had 2 miscarriages, and what sustained... Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor, for giving way, and in doing so, I do understand that relating to the number of people who have had difficulties, the problem we have is maybe the focus on the care, aftercare and counselling. There seems to be a little bit, and I'm not saying it's inevitable, but it always is the case, but we don't have the focus on counselling that is given to those people and families that have had and went through what is a very traumatic experience. And unfortunately, those people, sometimes the fear of what they've been through, they do not want to have another child or go through this again, so they deny the opportunity to maybe have a family because of what they've experienced, and due to lack of counselling, that sometimes can be a fear.
I thank my honourable friend and colleague for that intervention, and I do and can relate that to my own constituency and to the people I have spoken to as well, and I thank him for that. The thing that sustained my mother, my sister and my PPS was their faith, and that's why I come back to the thing that I referred to, the Honourable Member Colchester, how important it is to have faith. In the last year as well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I've known of 2 women in my constituency who have knew that their baby wouldn't live more than a couple of hours after that baby would be born, but yet and all they carried that baby till its full 9 months and enjoyed those that small hours together. I remember, I'm a member of many organisations. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of those is the Royal Black Preceptory. That father of that young child that was lost, we held the charity at the bowling club in Ballywater to raise money for this issue and raise some £1,000 for that at that time. But I just want to say that because it's important, because everyone deals with things in their own way and how they do it. Around 1 in 200 women have a miscarriage in the second trimester, and according to one study, once a pregnancy gets past 6 to 7 weeks and has a heartbeat, the risk of having a miscarriage drops to around 10%. Excuse me, these are the facts, and they're worthy of noting, but these cannot begin to deal with the process of grief that is suffered. Whilst it may sound comforting to understand the fact that 1 in 4 pregnancies end in a loss, you're not alone. But as one lady said, and it was very, very true, I don't want to be the 1 in 4, I want to be the 3 who live their life as normal and don't have the emptiness. It's important to note the facts, but it's more important, Madam Deputy Speaker, to acknowledge the grief and the right to grieve. Long gone are the days of just don't talk about your loss. We have learned that those who wish to express themselves, that is healing to do so. And some people, I think, need to talk about it. But some people also decide that they may not. So, of course, many women will never talk of their loss, and that too is part of their process and one to be respected. For others, the symbolism of a balloon release or lighting a candle is a way of acknowledging a life that did not blossom but was most definitely there. And we don't understand why many miscarriages take place, but with an NHS so under pressure. And you know, I say that really gently because we have a wonderful NHS who do great work. We do not investigate until the third miscarriage, and this in itself is incredibly difficult. I know of one lady whose parents paid for private care as encouraged by the midwife after her second miscarriage, and paid for those private tests and all the rest to learn that taking baby aspirin would increase her chance of keeping the next little one. And a baby aspirin once a day saw her with a beautiful baby girl. This could well have been another miscarriage had she not been able to seek private advice. So I just wonder, Madam Deputy Speaker, when it comes to that example of how that lady dealt with a miscarriage and then having a child, is the advice in the process in the system that is necessary to be there? I've said it before and I'll say it again, 3 miscarriages with no investigation is too much, and I sincerely urge a change in the NHS procedure. Again, I look to the Minister for maybe she'll be able to answer that or give me some idea of where we are. This debate cannot solve the issue of baby loss and grief, but it can validate the fact that this miscarriage was a loss, and it did happen. It should be remembered, and we as a nation should mourn with you. The fact that you cannot be issued a death certificate until 24 weeks, something which must be reviewed as well, I find quite incredulous. It doesn't mean it's not widely understood that you've suffered through a death, and not simply the mother, but the father and the would-be grandparents. Somebody, honourable lady for Edinburgh referred to it. I know the honourable member for Colchester hasn't spoken, but I can remember his speech, remember his contribution in this House, and it's a wider family that suffers as well. It's like throwing a stone into a puddle, into a pond of water. The ripples go right out to the edge. They touch everyone in the family circle or your friends. And again, everyone should remember that as well. I believe we must do more to recognise and support those who suffer from a miscarriage. A pamphlet in a cold, sterile procedure room is not enough. I read a little quote which touched my heart, and this lady said, "I carried you for every second of your life. I will love you for every second of mine, until your mummy and daddy can hold you."
Would the honourable gentleman give way? Would the honourable gentleman agree it's very important and very powerful when people are able to stand up in this place and talk with the experience and the big heart that he is doing?
I'd like to nominate for that intervention. Just to quote those words again, "I carried you for every second of your life. I will love you for every second of mine. Let sweet Jesus hold you until mummy and daddy can hold you. You have just reached heaven before I do."
Thank the honourable gentleman for his excellent speech, and the whole chamber agrees with every word that he's just said and appreciates the way in which he's said it. Paula Sheriff.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today's debate has been incredibly moving, and I'm humbled to respond today on behalf of the opposition. This debate, of course, coincides with Baby Loss Awareness Week, which is an important opportunity for us all to unite with bereaved parents and their families and friends to commemorate the lives of babies who died during, before, or shortly after birth. Firstly, I would like to congratulate every member who has had the courage to speak in here today about something as personal and as devastating as baby loss. Drawing from their own personal experiences will undoubtedly help and bring comfort to the thousands of others who have been affected by this important subject. And as you said earlier, Madam Deputy Speaker, today's debate has once again shown Parliament at its best. And I would like to reflect on some of the moving contributions that we've heard today. I would like to start by thanking the members for Colchester and Edinburgh. I know the member for Colchester can't speak today, I see, is now a minister, but your bravery in bringing this issue to this House is remarkable, and we thank you collectively for the incredibly hard work that you have shown and your great courage. So from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the official opposition, thank you both. To the member for Banbury who spoke very knowledgeably today about the work being done by DFID in developing countries, which was very heartening. To my honourable friend, the member for Ellesmere Port, who spoke very powerfully about how important it is that we support bereaved parents, and I'll go on to talk a bit more about that in a moment. And the member for Brigham Goole, who spoke about bereavement suites in hospitals. I think that is incredibly important and indeed something that I will take back and discuss with my own trust. The member for Rotherham, who also spoke of counselling support and indeed family support. The Right Honourable Member for South West Surrey, who spoke once again very knowledgeably about the impact on health professionals and how it must simply be one of the worst things that they would ever have to deal with. The member for North Ayrshire, who spoke so powerfully about her own experience and once again showed great bravery, but also discussed about how important it is that we are all aware and we empower others to learn about preeclampsia. And we also heard from the members for Caithness and from very, very moving contribution from my honourable friend, the member for Strangford. And I thank him very much once again for his incredible bravery. All of the charities that come together to collaborate on this commemorative event do amazing work supporting bereaved families, and there are now over 60 charities involved who have a huge impact on raising awareness nationally, and each organisation should be incredibly proud of everything they do and everything that they've achieved in driving this agenda forward. As well as using today's debate to raise awareness, this is an opportunity to reassess the progress being made and highlight the fact that although excellent care is available in the country, it is not available to everyone, everywhere. Every year, thousands of people experience the loss of a baby in pregnancy at or soon after birth and in infancy. Unfortunately, it isn't a rare event, and as too many of us in here will know, it can happen to anyone. The Miscarriage Association have invited women to share their experiences, and their bravery in sharing their stories is commendable. Angela has spoken about how her mental health deteriorated after her second and third miscarriages. Her words were, "My mental health deteriorated after those two losses. I needed medication to get through my periods when they returned. I couldn't go to the GP or the hospital without having a panic attack. I had horrible flashbacks of the miscarriages themselves. And although these subsided over time, I can still have a panic attack at the GPs without warning. It also started to affect me at work and in my personal life because my self-esteem and self-confidence plummeted, and I lost the ability to believe that I could do anything right. It was almost like when I lost the babies, I also lost some of myself." She has also spoken of the difficulty in talking about miscarriage and mental health, but the importance of doing so. I've also confided in a few close friends, and that helps too. I still struggle asking for help. It is not something that comes easily to me, but when I do, I'm always grateful that I tried. It's hard to break the silence around miscarriage, and even harder to break it around mental health and miscarriage combined, but I think we should try, even if it just helps one person feel a little less alone. Unfortunately, there remains a tremendous taboo around baby loss, and many women report that their family and friends do not want to talk about their loss, and this can lead to an isolation and disconnection from others. That means that parents can end up trapped by their own grief. There is work to be done to break down the unacceptable stigma and too often feelings of shame that can surround baby loss. Whatever the circumstances around the loss of a baby, every single woman deserves respectful and dignified care that acknowledges her loss, supports her mental health, and empowers her to make future decisions about having a child. The care that bereaved families receive from health and other professionals following pregnancy loss or the death of their baby can have long-lasting effects. Good care cannot remove parents' pain and grief, but it can help them through such a devastating time. In contrast, poor care can significantly add to their distress. Yet we know, unfortunately, that the standard of care in the UK varies between regions and even within settings depending on what stage a loss occurs, from early pregnancy through to infancy. Although there is excellent care available in this country, it isn't available to everyone. In England alone, there is still a 25% variation in stillbirths, and as a result, many parents do not receive the good quality bereavement support they so desperately need after pregnancy or baby loss. And we've heard this afternoon what a difference that can make. We need to ensure that there is learning from every single miscarriage and stillbirth. While we can rightly say that we are beginning to improve the approach to those dealing with the consequences of baby loss, it seems like we still have a way to go in understanding and really tackling the causes of it. According to the Lancet, the annual rate of stillbirth reduction in the UK has been slower than in the vast majority of comparable high-income countries. It is also important that all parents who experience pregnancy and baby loss and need specialist psychological support can access it, and in a timely fashion. Too often people who experience a psychiatric illness after their loss do not receive the support they need. I'm proud that Labour supported this year's Parental Bereavement Pay and Leave Act 2018. However, I know that many parents and caregivers entitled to bereavement support don't have access to appropriate mental health support. Right now, most mental health support is only available to mothers and is focused on women who are pregnant or already have a baby. This support often takes place in neonatal units, which understandably, and we heard earlier from the member for Brigham Goole, can add to trauma. Mental health support must take place in appropriate places for those who have lost a baby and must be available for the entire family unit, fathers, siblings, grandparents and so on. And coping with grief is something that all family members will need time and space for on the loss of a baby. Men and women may of course grieve differently, and it needs to be acknowledged that fathers can be forgotten in this experience, particularly as they may express less emotion, which can be misunderstood as indifference to the loss of their baby. Dad Keith has talked to the charity Tommy's about the stillbirth of his second born, a son named Owen. His words were, "I had to go back to work straight away. It was a good distraction. I ran a lot and I kept doing that. I signed up for marathons. Running got me away for a few hours at a time and gave me a way to switch off. I wasn't right for at least 6 months after. I was functioning, but I was on autopilot. I wasn't myself. People might not have noticed too much." So I would urge the government to develop a national standard with guidance to support the planning, funding and delivery of specialist services with psychological support for those going through the loss of baby. It is also important that bereavement-trained midwives or gynaecological counsellors are available in every hospital, not part-time but full-time, and available for parents whenever they need them. Let us not forget that many stillbirths and neonatal deaths are sudden and unexpected. It is a hugely traumatic experience and people need support immediately, and a trained individual is so important. I'd like to end today, Madam Deputy Speaker, by saying a few words about the National Bereavement Care Pathway. The final independent evaluation of the National Bereavement Care Pathway wave of 2 pilot sites was published in May 2019 and provides evidence that the NBCP has improved bereavement care received by parents after the loss of a baby. And I think it was commendable that both the former Prime Minister and the former Health Minister, the member for Thurrock, both endorsed the rollout of this programme. And I know that the NBCP is increasingly attracting interest from NHS trusts across the country, and I hope that many more do adopt this approach. So in conclusion, the debates that we have had over the last few years, and again this evening, underline the importance of the work undertaken by honourable members and the many charities in this sector. It means that the silence members have talked about today is now beginning to end. So I cannot overstate how courageous those who have spoken out about their personal experiences are, or how influential those interventions have proven to be. I hope those who have spoken out continue to have the courage to talk about what we need to do to improve the care and support for bereaved families. Thank you.
Minister Nadine Dorries.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and what an important debate this has been this afternoon, and is of course thanks to the efforts of the Honourable Lady for Edinburgh and the member for Colchester, who has been sat next to me throughout this debate. And actually the Honourable Lady for Edinburgh, I believe, still chairs the APPG on baby loss. And this afternoon, this debate has happened now, I think this is the 4th year, am I right? The 4th year this has happened, and I hope that they continue to yearly push for this debate, and I hope this goes on now forever, because it is such an important time to focus not only on the areas people feel we should be concentrating on moving forward, but also to focus on the achievements and to hear the stories from so many people. I'd like to respond to some of the points that have been made this afternoon in the 10 minutes that I have, and I'd like to begin with the former Secretary of State, who in his usual modest way actually omitted to mention in his own speech some of the incredible contribution he has personally made in this area. And I know he spoke during his speech quite passionately about changing from a culture of blame to one of learning. And he did that himself by his own efforts, by introducing what we know as HSIB in the DHSC, which has undertaken, he instructed to undertake, I believe, 1,000 maternity investigations a year, which include stillbirths and other mortality issues. And he asked, how will we share the lesson learnt between trusts? Well, HSIB and patient safety going forward has established a process for doing this, and the perinatal mortality review annual report is being published on Thursday, and I think he may know this, and the HSIB annual report will be published in due course. Both reports will begin to share some of the learning from more than 1,500 cases, and we are doing more to share information when things do go wrong. And as a result of the former Secretary of State's own initiative, we will, I believe, see the examples that he cited of when something goes wrong in one trust, ensuring that it doesn't go wrong in another trust moving forward. And that will be the outcome, we all hope, of HSIB moving forward. And we cannot thank the former Secretary of State enough. And I'm sure we will be mentioning his efforts for many years to come. The Honourable Lady, who from North Ayrshire and Arran, she spoke so powerfully about her own loss. And I think one of the themes that has been mentioned today has been mental health and the support that those who've lost a baby, both fathers and families, need at a time of loss. And she spoke so powerfully about her own loss, and actually moved me to tears. And in April, she spoke about testing for preeclampsia. And what I'd like to say is that April 2019, NHS England announced that they will make the placental growth factor blood test available across the country in light of evidence that this blood test speeds up the diagnosis of preeclampsia. And what I would urge her to do is to go to the Health Department in Scotland and to push for parity for the same test that mothers in England are now going to be having to be made available to mothers in Scotland. And I'm sure other members will call for that going forward in this place too. I know there are other members in this House who have suffered loss through preeclampsia. It is a dreadful condition. All that we can do to ensure that no mother has to go through that should be our objective. Of course, yes.
Can I just, I thank the Minister, it's been a very good point. Can I just very briefly pay an enormous tribute to my honourable friend, the member for North Ayrshire and Arran, who's done phenomenal work in bringing her experiences. And I'd like to thank the Minister for her remarks. And I know that, although they may not always see eye to eye on some issues on this issue, I know it would be great if her department and the devolved in the Scottish Government can work closely together as well. Thank you.
And I've already sent a message to my team asking about that. Why isn't this test being done in Scotland, and what can we do to ensure that this is actually rolled out across the UK? So if we can have those conversations with the devolved administration, then I certainly will do, and I'll certainly push it from my end and my department. Yes, of course.
So I share the sentiments from the Honourable Gentleman at the SNP bench about this issue of collaboration is critical. And one of my constituents raised this concern with me about the fact that there was no peer-to-peer support within the medical profession when she was dealing with her GP, and she relied on Simba, the charity, as a result of a friend referring her to get that support. So I think actually maximum collaboration and support would be critical, and hopefully we can share as much information to try and avoid people being felt that they're left alone or not given the right support that they need. I think I was quite shocked to hear that happened to my constituents, so I'd be keen to see that happen, help promote it as much as I can.
I thank you for his contribution, but I only have a few minutes left, so I do have to move on. To the Honourable Lady for Edisbury, she asked, what are we doing to eliminate the stigma around mental health? Well, as the Minister for Mental Health, we're doing a huge amount. Not least, I don't know if anybody in the Chambers managed to see it yet, a video was released this week called Every Mind Matters, a campaign, Every Mind Matters, which was that the Royals kindly voiced over. It was a video which was written by Richard Curtis and features many, many celebrities like Davina McCall and others. And it's all about those celebrities, those people, those faces that everybody knows and everyone recognises, talking about their own mental health issues to break down that stigma. And that is just one of the many issues, the many campaigns that are taking place. Because we do, I spoke about this in the debate last week. When somebody breaks their leg, we put a plaster cast on the leg, and that's fine. When someone has a mental health issue, they don't want to talk about it, and I hope that the stigma is reducing and that there is a parity and equality between mental health and physical health. And I think, campaigns like this, like Every Mind Matters, are getting us there.
I'm very grateful for the Minister giving way. I think the evidence that was disclosed in the debate about the way in which maternal loss of babies can cause PTSD is really good evidence that shows that there needs to be concrete mental health support for parents who've gone through this experience.
Minister. Thank you. Well, what I would like to say is that in the long-term plan, to the Honourable Lady, in response to that, the NHS commits to improve access to the quality of perinatal mental health care for mothers and their partners and children as well. And what we have done is we are looking to, in the long-term plan, we've committed an additional 24,000 women will have access to specialist perinatal mental health support, including more support for fathers and parents. So that is as a part of the £2.3 billion investment into mental health that this government has recently announced. And I'll say it again, 2.3 billion, that's over half of the annual prisons budget. And of course, some of that money has to be directed towards mothers and towards this particular situation. The Honourable Lady for Banbury brought up actually an important point about infant mortality in other countries around the world, not just here. And I'd just like to say to her quickly that the Secretary of State for DFID did announce a £600 million reproductive health supplies programme to help prevent deaths of mothers and newborn babies and children in the developing world by 2030. And it will give 20 million women and girls access to family planning, prevent 5 million unintended pregnancies each year up to 2025, and it will focus on the most vulnerable women, including FGM survivors. We are committed to working with Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to vaccinate a further 300 million children in the world's poorest countries by 2025. The Honourable Lady also brought up about making maternal mortality a never event. I'm not sure if we can actually always, that will be an achievable objective, but NHS England is supporting the establishment of the maternal medicine networks, which ensure women with acute and chronic medical problems have timely access to special advice and care at all stages of their pregnancy. I'd just like to mention a few of the people who spoke in the speech. The Honourable Member from Ellesmere Port and Neston spoke about the grief. Grief for me is the last taboo. It's the one thing that people still don't talk about. They still don't talk about how grief affects them. And I hope that some of the investment that we're putting into mental health services and community services will help with that and help people to address grief. The Honourable Member for Brigg and Goole spoke about, I think it was somebody who works in his office who has raised the funds, and he spoke about, I think it was the Cherish Suite, and the Honourable Lady for Broxtowe spoke about the Sanctuary Suite. I think over 50% of hospitals now have suites like this, which are so important. But, I don't want to reiterate what anybody said, but the fact that, babies are born in a part of a hospital which is traditionally filled with joy, is incredibly difficult. And it makes, and the Honourable Member for Colchester has told me that it makes such a difference if you have somewhere to go, even to stay overnight, to stay with your baby, for the family to go. And over 50% of hospitals have this in the UK. And with the 40 new hospitals that are being built going forward, I'm going to ask that these suites are made available in the maternity areas at all those hospitals going forward. In response, I will ask, I will certainly push. And I just want to mention, I want to continue on the points. So the Honourable Member for, please pull me if I miss anybody out, the Honourable Member for Strangford, who spoke so passionately, thank you. I know he's spoken in every baby loss debate that we've had, and he's spoken about the important role that chaplains play also in the past in situations like this, and I'd like to thank him for his incredible contribution. He asked about the pregnancy loss review, and it's currently working with key partners to make recommendations to government at improving the care and support women and families receive when experiencing a pre-24-week gestation baby loss, and we're hoping the report will be published in due course and not too long from now. I'd just like to speak about an area that I am particularly focused on in this area, and that's Group B strep support. I spoke about this many times. I had my own adjournment debate on this before I was a minister, and it's something when I arrived in the department, I set 5 key priorities, and this was number 1 in the key priority areas, because this in itself will prevent infant mortality. Group B strep causes the leading cause of bacterial infection in newborn babies, just to put that down the record. I fully support the review that is taking place, and I hope that we may have some further information going forward in progress that we can make on this, hopefully in the not too distant future. The Honourable Lady spoke about, the Honourable Member for Rotherham spoke about hospices. I have Keach House in my own constituency. I think it's slightly outside hospices, and the role of hospices is slightly outside the debate, considering, bearing in mind the amount of investment that we are putting into mental health services and counselling services, and particularly somebody mentioned IAPS, the importance of talking therapies going forward. I hope that any mother and family who need mental health counselling in future as a result of baby loss will be able to access those services. I will write to her further about the role of hospices in this particular area. I appreciate the support from members on both sides of the House for maternity safety ambition. I echo the words of Madam Deputy Speaker about how the tone of this House and how important debates are, such as this. I'd like to also, in particular, I think one of the most important things to come out of the debate today is the importance of learning for improvement, and what we are beginning to learn through the perinatal mortality review tool, and from the Healthcare Safety Investigation Branch, which I mentioned, which the former Secretary of State introduced. I would like to remind members that the NHS is still one of the safest. The NHS in the UK is still the safest place in the world to have a baby. 0.7% of all births result in a stillbirth or a neonatal death. Having said that, on a day like today, 12 babies in England and 15 across the UK will be stillborn or die soon after birth, and many more families will lose a baby through miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy and other causes. We are making progress though. In 2015, it was 17 babies a day. Maternity and neonatal safety initiatives are beginning to improve outcomes, with most of the anticipated impacts still to be realised as safety improvements are embedded in maternity and neonatal services as we learn more from research and investigations about which babies die and why. Finally, as we have discussed, the theme of Baby Loss Awareness Week 29 is psychological support for those bereaved parents that need it. I understand that a working group is being convened to support the development of maternity outreach clinics that will integrate maternity reproductive health and psychological therapy for women experiencing mental health difficulties arising from and directly related to the maternity experience. I will undertake to ask this working group if they could consider extending the maternity experience to those who have lost a child in pregnancy during labour and childbirth in the neonatal period. I would like to finish today by thanking all the midwives, doctors and healthcare support workers who do such a fantastic job delivering more than 600,000 babies successfully every day, and also helping parents who sadly do not experience the happiness of a healthy baby. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. What an excellent, calm, constructive debate. The question is that this House has considered Baby Loss Awareness Week. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to motion number 8, relating to the Joint Committee on Statutory Instruments. Mr. Bill Wiggin.
I beg to move.
The question is, as on the order paper, as many as that opinion say aye. Aye. On the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order. The sitting is now suspended until approximately 7:30. The annunciator will carry further information about the likely timing at which the sitting will resume, and shortly before the sitting resumes, Mr. Speaker shall cause the division bells to be sounded. Order. Order.